Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Ka-Pow Comics, and it's the penultimate best of 2021. Yay, we're almost done. And I've had a lot of fun doing this. I've talked about stuff which a lot of people seem to agree with, which is nice. But a few people are like, oh, that one. And there's always a reason. I'd never just mix them up a bunch because I like it and there's no other reason. And today we're going to do another Ram V one, which should come as no surprise to anyone that Ram V's got more than one on this list. If you've been following this channel since before it was a YouTube thing when I was just doing podcasts, you'll know Ram V's a writer I love. And even though the top spot has not been decided yet, I'm going to say right now, Ram V has been my absolute favourite writer of the year. Consistently putting out more stuff that I've loved than anyone else, and that's going up against talent like Al Ewing and Kieran Gillen, who I'm absolutely loving as well. But before we get into that, before we get too much into the review of it, you may notice that the picture that's on the thumbnail does not look like this. It's because there is no spare copy of it. It wasn't on my pull list. The reason for that being Boom Studios are putting out quite a lot of miniseries, and they were like trying to capitalize on some successes they've had, which ended up going like huge viral, and basically then having to do like 8 prints of them to keep up with demand. And I hate to say it, when it first came out, I thought the marketing on it was very much them trying to do it with Ram V. I was like, you know what, I'll read it and I'll see what I think. But then I read it, I loved it, and we sold out, so I couldn't get a copy on my own. Throw into the fact that even though the collection, the trade paperback, was solicited back in September, it still hasn't arrived yet and won't arrive for like 2 weeks into January, which is frustrating because I really want my own copy and I really want to sit and read it all, and I want to be able to show you. Because before we get into the writing of it, which is fantastic, by the way, we're going to talk about Philippe Adrande, and I apologize if I pronounced that name incorrectly. It's just how it sounds in my head. But they're the artist, and they are spectacular. And it's an artist I'm not like that familiar with in the past. It's not like I've been well aware of their work and I've raved about them before. But I fell in love with them very early on in this one because they had to draw some very complicated ideas, including mythical, legendary creatures and individuals who I had no concept of what they looked like, and we'll get into that later on. And they had to do it in such a way that they fitted into the world that existed, because this is a very kind of contemporary real world comic book that is being created. But having these kind of legendary creatures in, which are alien to me in a certain way, had to be done with style and panache, and be handled well enough that it didn't jar and it didn't pull me out of the comic book straight away, because it happened very early on. And Andrade absolutely masterfully did it. It's brilliant. Not just those kind of character designs, but also simple character designs, like just random people in the world. There's a certain stylized nature to it, which means even the more extreme, as I've mentioned, like legendary supernatural kind of creatures and individuals, they don't stand out so much because he leans into and not quite, but almost caricature nature of a lot of the characters. So certain features are expanded and concentrated on, and it means that everyone has their own unique look. And in a comic book with quite a lot of cast members, that's a pretty impressive thing to do, especially when you consider the massive time jumps and some people appearing as infants and children, teenagers, adults, and all men. You get to see all of that, and you get to see the sense of the character staying throughout. Not just that, but all the backdrops are amazing as well. This is a vibrant world that's been created, both in a supernatural way and a real human world kind of way, and everything looks immaculate. The line work is so elegant and so simple that you almost feel like he has no more bother doing it than I would doing a 5-pointed star. Like, you know, it feels like it's just such a naturalistic way for them to draw that it comes across as just this is the world in his head writ large on paper. Something which I don't imagine any artist could ever say that's actually what happens. It's got to be way more work than I imagine, but it is effortless and it is so enjoyable to fall into the world. I mean, if you look at the cover of it, it's literally Laila Starr falling into the world. That is exactly how I felt myself as somebody viewing this artwork. It was beautiful and all-encompassing and everything I wanted it to be, because it also wasn't so perfect and so computer done and so clean. It felt organic and it felt full of life. And God, I love that kind of thing. Now we're going to get onto the writing and why some of this stuff matters. Because the world is, as I say, very much our world, but with some supernatural and legendary creature individuals, which do not fit in stuff that I know an awful lot about. They are playing with, I think, some Hindu religious stuff. I apologize if I've got that wrong. Somebody has corrected me on this one before, and now I'm kind of correcting myself in my own head, even though I don't know if I'm wrong. I just don't want to get it wrong, so I apologize. But it's a world I don't know that much about. I'm reasonably well read on a lot of Christian faiths, and I know a little bit about Islam and Judaism, but I really don't know much about more polytheistic kind of cultures. It's not something. I hate to say it. Most of the time, when I think of politics stuff, I think of things more in the terms of legends rather than religions, which is my own issue, I know, but I don't know much about them, other than I'd say probably like I know a little bit about the Greek and Roman gods and Norse and stuff like that. But again, far more European. But this one actually did a very good job of dropping me into this world and explained stuff in a way which didn't rely on panel upon panel of exposition. But when it did get you into it, it did it in such a way which was stylistic. His writing is brilliant, and his writing again is poetic. I've said this repeatedly about him. There are so many times I've been reading Ram V stuff where I've stopped, looked up, paused for a second, then read the line out loud, because that is how one should enjoy poetry. Whether it's a lyric song or an actual poem or just some fantastic writing, there is certain things which the cadence and the rhythm of how it actually comes out when it's spoken is different than the way it will be in your head. And he writes so well that you need to stop and occasionally admire him for that. And in this situation, not only is it poetic, but it's epically poetic. This is a very long story. It's said only 5 issues, but it is a lifetime's worth of stories. The many deaths of Laila Starr. She dies repeatedly and comes back at various points through other people's lives, dropping in and out of them, doing wonderful and terrible things. And they're all brilliant. They all involve so much animation and so much vibrancy that you can't help but want to keep turning the page to see where she is taking you as you're following her story. And it does very much feel like that kind of thing. She is your guide through this world, and she doesn't want to be there. And it makes it even better because you feel like you're sharing in the struggle, that you want to know what happens next, even though you kind of know that that's not her goal. She has things she wants to do, and it feels like they're obligations rather than something that should be enjoyable for her. But the journey is so good, and it's so much fun to read. Check it out. In fact, anything I've read by Ram V, with the possible exception of Venom, because I'm not really into that one as much as I think I should be. But anything else by them, go and read it. It's absolutely brilliant. This is my favorite thing they've put out this year, because it hits every single beat that I have liked about Ram V's work, and it's all done with such style that it's impossible to think it's not fantastic. And it does mean, and I'm watching this now, you're thinking, okay, the effusive praise pouring out of this guy's mouth, what on earth could possibly be better than this? Well, you have to tune in tomorrow to find out. Until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.